Okay. Hi, Kristen. Glad to see you here. I'm starting a little bit early, and I have a few things to go through, and then I've got, of course, these TED guest lectures. We'll talk about some of them, and we will probably we may have a little bit shorter session than I would anticipate, but I'll make sure I'm getting recording this. Yep. Okay. The again, any work is due today at 5 o'clock, and we're over on, and we have an exam today on chapter 11. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that, and to also talk about the interactive session over on pages 102 to 103. Now, let me go back up here for a moment. I'm going to do a search for 102. I think they'll let me do a whole search, and then we'll come back to the chapter and see if it's going to get me over there. All right. Here we are, page 102. Now, the interactive session that's due deals with these smart products and smart companies, and they walk you through general background, and then Nike and Nike's use of embedded technology. And so it's a good interactive session, and I think you're going to find some interesting stuff as far as what they're doing. Now, again, here are the case study questions. All right. And when you guys discuss number one, I'm certainly going to want you to be talking about use the Porter model, okay? And then I have the sources for you there in turn, and there again, when you turn in your work, I'm hoping that I'll see more than the book texts. All right. Now let me get certain here that I mute somebody's phone. There you go. And you can still hear me, but I don't have to hear you. All right. Now, let's go back for just a moment and take a look at the fall free days. And I mean, today, tomorrow, of course, our Thursday and Friday are fall free days. And the interactive session, we just looked at it. And then you've got chapter 11. And I talked some about risk assessment and some resources that deal with this, IoT security, use of cyber criminals, the lives of cyber criminals, and then the big debate that went on. In fact, it ended up being a court case of technology firms providing data help abroad, and you'll want to take a look at that resource because it is one of these key privacy issues. And then I've got some lectures, and the viewing is required, and so I'm going to expect you to go over there and take a look at those because those are like guest lectures. I want to go over to chapter 11 in the textbook today, and I'll go back to the contents part. Yeah, chapter 11. I keep wanting to say 15, but it's chapter 11. And this deals with the issue of managing knowledge. So we'll go back over here. Okay. And
mute him in this.
We have a whole series of questions here, or learning objectives. And let me see for a minute if we've got anybody that's got their phone. Everybody should be muted except me. All right, there we go. Now, the whole idea of knowledge management really fits back into this thing fits into this thing where we talked about data, and then information, which is data I can use to make a decision, okay? And then knowledge, which is which is information, which is replicable and generalizable. I can use it in a variety of situations. And then business wisdom. So when we talk about not managing knowledge, we're talking about the broad scope of two types of knowledge within a company. One of them is going to be, I guess you would want to call it visible, okay, or explicit. And what they mean there is just simply what everybody knows. All the stuff that's written down in handbooks, all the stuff that's written down in procedure manuals, product labeling, etc. That's knowledge. It's out there and everybody knows about it. Okay. And glad to see Olivia and Brady. Let me pop down here for a sec. Jack, Alexis, good to see you here. Jan as well. Hope you're feeling better. And Amon. And then we have what we call implicit knowledge, and that is, or it's not stated, but everybody kind of knows it. And a lot of it is tied up, if you've had your org behavior course, in what we call org behavior, and those elements of the company that are part of its culture, okay? And so when we talk about managing knowledge, we really we focus more on the explicit stuff, because the other stuff, the cultural stuff, is a more difficult thing. But information systems certainly lend themselves to understanding how we deal with knowledge. And as I've said before, the average employee who walks out of a business has about $25,000 worth of knowledge in their head about that company and what the company is doing. And so I guess you have to look at that and say, all right, each individual employee is exceptionally valued. Now, they provide a good example over here about Cadillac, okay, and how they've developed virtual dealerships, all right, and that lets you go in and look around the car and look around the dealership, see what it's like, etc. And again, this is a good use of knowledge management, and they're using the VR technology. Facebook is experimenting with some of this. The New York Times has experimented with this. In fact, we subscribed to the New York Times, the online version, and I got a set of virtual reality glasses, and you put them on, and they have certain articles where you can see, like you can look at like the Mars rover, this kind of thing. Now, those are fun or whimsical uses. More serious uses are, for example, you're trying to design a building, and the virtual reality allows you to literally be inside the building. Or you're designing a car, and you can literally sit in the front seat. And so you use that visual. The VR technologies are still really in their infancies, but will be used tremendously. But they take knowledge, okay, because they take not just. You're not putting up a PowerPoint, you're putting up an experience, okay? So that would be the best way. Now, again, here's this kind of familiar paradigm that you've got, okay? And the role of knowledge management in business, okay? And again, the template and the business solutions and the business challenges and how we feed to address those. So again, I can't emphasize enough that this template is, for all intents and purposes, itself a knowledge management device. Rubrics, templates, things that organize information that we can use over and over and over, really is knowledge. And how well we manage that is exceptionally important, because more things are becoming knowledge-based. Not just things like a template, but robots, automated vehicles, smart appliances, smart clothes. Any of that stuff really does require a knowledge, a company that's able to manage its knowledge. Now, as I talked about the dimensions of knowledge, and you hear I've talked about wisdom, okay, knowledge, tacit knowledge, or explicit knowledge, and then implicit knowledge. And they give us some of these dimensions, okay, in terms of knowledge is an asset. It has different forms, it has location, and it's situational. What makes it different from wisdom, as they mention up here in the text, is that it's about it's about a collective sense and something that's timeless or more closer to mission oriented. Okay. All right. Now they talk about organizational learning and the knowledge management value chain. And I want to pop over here to the figure. Okay. This is an excellent summary of what happens with the knowledge management chain and how that works. The systems that are there, the value chain itself, and what we do with data, its information acquisition. So this is, I think, in terms of all of the things I've seen out there, the authors of this text have done a tremendous job, okay, in handling the knowledge management and what knowledge management is. Now, they talk about the decisions, the dissemination of it, its application. They talk about communities of practice. Maybe some of you are part of a learning community when you came here. And again, the authors are going to give you a lot of vocabulary that doesn't make much sense in many ways at this point in time, but it will make a lot of sense down the road. And so it's a good chapter for you to sink your teeth in, because we still are not at the point where we can really, really, really attach a price tag or a value to knowledge management. All right. Let me give you a really good example of some things that people are trying to do. One of them is trying to figure out what happens when a person becomes a CEO of a company. What does that mean? All right. How does that impact their lives? All right. And that's, and companies, there are some firms out there that do a lot of just following a CEO around. These are large firms that can afford that type of service and what that person does and the type of information they encounter. So you can almost get a picture of the type of person and the type of data that they're going to run into, or information or situations, as they run that company. And we do a lot of this in terms of data mining. We talk about expert systems. So again, a lot of these terms are fuzzy because we still have not really found the best way to put the collection, and a data warehouse or database is probably the best example of this that we have, okay? And again, we have another example of the use, and this is from the interactive session for this chapter, okay? And handling documents, how do we handle them, how do we catalog them, expertise sharing. You'll often find in a lot of organizations, particularly big ones, that people have had, especially in very large companies, you'll find that people there have had a lot of experience in a lot of different settings at work. And because of that, they have they have a lot of skills that might be brought to bear. And so everybody wants to, if you have that resource, you want to utilize it. Well, again, they talk about knowledge workers, and this chapter deals with some important but very groundbreaking concepts. And again, when it all is said and done, it's human beings who know how to take these systems and put them together to get the kind of impact or effect that the authors in the course talk about it. And it's just such a rich chapter. You can see some of these, you can see that in terms of the requirements of knowledge system, we're really good, but this is where things are not so. In terms of knowledge management, we really still don't have the software yet, okay? Now we can do some things, graphing and modeling, that type of stuff, but otherwise, no. Now, virtual reality system, they talk about that, and they walk you through some of these ideas about artificial intelligence, knowledge discovery. These are terms that are going to become more and more familiar to you as you're out working. They seem very exotic to you now because they really are. We just have really started studying knowledge management in the past maybe 20 years at the most. And of course, here was we had this discussion about robots and will they replace people in manufacturing? And I think we've been along, I think in terms of mass production, we're far along enough the curve to know that I think we're far enough along in the curve to know that robots can do certain things, but ultimately you got to have a human being to handle them or to oversee them and make sure they're functioning, to make sure the settings are right, etc. Because when people hear robotics, they think about a robot per se, and there are some the military has developed some things. MIT has something that mimics a human running around, but nothing that's even close to a human being. And when you talk about robotics in a manufacturing facility, you're talking about very specialized things. They have an arm, a hand, or whatever they have. So now expert systems, the key piece of this, of understanding what an ESS or an expert system is essentially a system that's based on rules and that you apply those rules. It's really like, as some of you have had, if you've had business problem analysis with me or you've had data admin with me, and we wrote queries, okay? We used conditional statements. An expert system really operates on that basis, okay? It's just that we do have some decent software as far as that goes, but we don't know for sure. And they give us some examples, and then we move on to fuzzy logic, case-based reasoning, how that works. And again, this stuff has a lot of promise and a lot of potential, but we just have not learned yet how to capture it and really use it to master things, except in some very, very, very isolated situations. Okay, well, I think the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory, and I think when you see the authors talk about things like algorithms, okay, they're talking about a model, generally some type of mathematical model that produces a result on the basis of some set of constants or constraints. And they give you, basically talking about, the bits and bytes, the zeros and the ones and all that business. And they give us some components. Like I said, a lot of this chapter is going to seem very out there. And it's because a lot of these concepts are, okay? And I know, of course, you can read these and you can look at all this much faster than I can talk to you. And I would not want to unduly just give you a boring lecture, okay? I understand they can just make you want to go to sleep. Let me recommend that you do this. The review summary, I think, puts a lot of this into perspective. I think also going back and visiting those figures and graphs where it's summarized in graph will make a lot of sense to you. And I'm not saying dismiss this chapter under any circumstances, okay? But what I am saying is that you're going to encounter some vocabulary, and you're going to read some things and see some things and say, I'm not so sure about that. And you're right to question it, because there are a lot of people like myself who say there may be some things that we just can't capture. There may be some things that are going to slip through the cracks in terms of knowledge. Now, some crude ways that we do this is, for example, when we terminate employees, they'll be given an interview. And after a year of collecting those interviews, somebody will sit down and they'll say, why are people leaving us? Okay? Why are we having these problems with attendance, or why are we having problems with other things? And in the end, that's what it really boils down to. Well, folks, listen, I'm going to show you something real quickly. And again, I'm a great believer in you using the resources and giving you the best resources. If I had the budget, okay, to bring in guest speakers, I could bring in some people who could make this exceptionally engaging, much more so than me, okay? And I've got these guest lectures and the viewings required on them, okay? And these are, again, they deal with some very contemporary topics, and these deal with the dark side of all this, privacy, global networks, and surveillance. And these are, I think, the issues that really are tied in with this chapter, and they tie it within the sense of, trying to watch people or see how they behave and try to make some judgments or draw inferences from those. So those are required reading, and I want you to have to do those. And I'll go back over here for just a second to this page. All right. And I'd like you to please take a look at these resources that I've got for you and have assembled, because they will provide you with some really, really, really good insights on the issues about privacy and so forth. And I really didn't feel like it was necessary to go out and show you some of the positive things in terms of knowledge management, or to maybe get you excited about it, because many of the topics are so out there at this point that some of these TED lectures I've heard on them, it's kind of like, oh, that's way too out there. In the end, managers are practical people who make decisions. In the end, they're people who have to deal in the here and now, far more than the future. And so I think that'll be something that's that's useful to you. Now, I want to just take a look ahead at next week. And again, first of all, let me say this before I go too much further. Please be careful on your way out if you're headed somewhere today. But you're going to see some good stuff here, and that's coming up when we look at the management decision problems over on page 329, an interactive session. And then I've got several. This is from last year, but it's still probably pretty good. Here's the best enterprise resource planning software and the best CRM software and inventory software. And so I want you to take a look at that. And then I think something that's really, really, really critical for you to see is this piece on mass customization, these two resources, okay? And Build a Car Online, home design software, build your own Nike. And there are some guest speakers, TED Talks that deal with this. The software up here and these types of tools that are emerging are fine, but it's mass customization that's really going to be a game changer. Now, you could go out and find this story out on the internet. There's a gentleman down in Texas who has a 3D printer, and he's developed the programming to build a gun. And he had a website out there where people could come and download, and they could download the plan. And if you have a 3D printer, okay, a 3D printer, it prints out images of things, but in all dimensions. So, and you have a mold or a material that you put in, and you program in the instructions, and it makes an item. And he's made plastic guns, plastic rifles. And so in the future, when so many things, you'll see something, but you'll say, I like it, but not that color. And I know this sounds extremely far-fetched. You go, man, he's crazy. No, I can tell you right now that by the time you're my age, much of the stuff that you have in your home, furniture, and I would say really smaller, like certainly dishes, anything that, and probably some furniture, you'll have a 3D printer at your house, and you'll print it and you'll make it, and then it will be a matter of you adding color to it. And probably at that point they'll do colorized 3D printing. I know that sounds like fantastic stuff, but it's out there. Or at the very least, you'll be able to order something and have it made and sent to you within 24 hours. The professional, or what I would call the industrial grade printers are going to really change the face of manufacturing, because it's going to allow more and more companies to be batch producers. And as they become batch producers, as they make stuff just on order, they're going to be able to really tailor things. And that's going to pose a big threat to a lot of companies that just mass produce stuff. Well, I think I've got there for you in these TED Talks for this week at the very least, probably another 35 or 40 minutes to look at. And so I'm going to shut the class down at this point, and I'm going to say, please go over there and take a look. The viewing's required, and you certainly would be. I would certainly encourage you to look at the video, but maybe even to then turn around and look at the transcript and pull it out. Okay? Well, folks, I'm going to cut it off, and I think you got plenty there that you can do, some resources to look at, and so I'm going to call it a day. Please, again, be careful in your travels. All of you who are here today, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And I want to say this. I continue to see better work from you all the time. So, I continue to see the better work from you. And so keep it up. I think you're going to, the more you work on these, the more that those interactive sessions, okay, or those cases will be meaningful to you, and they'll add to your understanding of MIS. And let me ask you, if there's anybody here at this point who has any questions, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to do it. Give you a